Hello and welcome to episode 318 of the Stacey West podcast. My name, and I hope you would know this by now after 317 previous episodes, is Gary Hutchinson. I will be your host for the next hour or so. It depends because we have the unknown quantity that is Christopher Lamming next to me. How are you doing, my friend?
Hello, very well. I had a lovely relaxing weekend, actually, I have to say. Football helps that, of course. But yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. How are you? Was yours relaxing yesterday?
I'm a bit hungover, if I'm honest, still. It was an interesting night. We can talk about the early kickoff and all that sort of thing, but for me, I was really excited to see the early kickoffs. Not loads of them because football's a 3 o'clock on a Saturday thing, but it does give me an opportunity to get home in good time, get my write-up done maybe before sort of 7 o'clock, spend the evening with Fee, all's well and good. Although last night it had me drinking absinthe coladas in all bar one or something like that at the top of the hill at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not sure that was what was entirely intended. Yeah, it was a little bit difficult. My phone hardly had any battery. So I was messaging Fee, telling her where I was and looking to get picked up. But she wasn't getting any of my messages. So she had to message Dave to find out what time I was to be picked up. So when I got picked up, I was in the doghouse. I was eating a kebab from the kebab shop at Rugby, which was vile. I came in with the kebab, sat on the sofa while Fee went to bed, started watching Match of the Day. And the next thing I knew, it was 1:30. And the dog had helped himself to a bit of kebab. So yeah, wasn't particularly what I intended to do, but it was excitement for a Saturday. And you were out as well afterwards, weren't you?
Only briefly, yeah. I was meeting some old school friends, the sort of people that you get to see sort of 3 or 4 times a year because everyone's moved away. We kind of made sure we had a meet up now and then, and yeah, a couple of my mates came to the game. So yeah, poor old my mate Tom, who lives down in he actually is just in Lincolnshire again now. He's recently moved to Holbeach, where it was down near kind of Cambridge way for a while. But he came up, so he drove an hour to the game. First game he's been to for a couple of years. They could be coming back anytime soon after a hardly entertaining 90 minutes of football. But yeah, we didn't stay out long, to be honest. Most of us are driving. I'll be honest, I've got quite a bit going on in October and November. So I'm trying to be a good boy at the moment and save some money, save my liver a little bit as well. But yeah, so we went to Stack after to get a bite to eat, have a couple of hours just talking rubbish with each other, and then a nice early drive home, and for the first time for weeks, a Saturday night which involved very little. Just on my steps away this weekend, just house to myself, just chilling out. And I like to make the most of weekends normally, but now and then it's nice just to have a chill out one. So I feel really refreshed today. I'm really chilled out and relaxed. So it's all good.
Got home and it was good. Pot noodle and a walk, was it?
No, I cooked a proper meal. It's all good.
Yeah.
And I didn't go for a walk anywhere at all, thank you.
No. Well, we had one of our party from yesterday was also up for his first game in a long while. Alf, who we went to school with, he's based in Sussex, I think it is, and he came all the way up from Sussex to watch it. And I think he was particularly bored. Pete Summers was there. So he was also particularly bored. And as I put in my write-up, it was amusing that normally you walk away from the game and you're talking and debating about all sorts of stuff. And we hadn't got past one of the bridges on the left-hand side to turn onto the high street before we started talking about which pub to go to, because there was so little to talk about from the game. Nothing really in terms of incidents, nothing really in terms of action, nothing in terms of chances or controversy. It was literally just like looking at a blank bit of paper for 90 minutes and walking away going, oh well. And so how the hell we're going to spread this over a 1 hour podcast, I really don't know, because there's very, very little to talk about. I mean, it's a little bit like the Wigan game from last season, and that's quite a lazy comparison perhaps at their place, where nothing really happened, but you felt that either team was only ever one slip away from something happening. Two decent teams making each other look bad basically, I think was my overriding opinion. But if we will strip it back and go all the way back to the start, we'll go with team selection. There was one big major change. It's one I predicted would happen last week and didn't. I didn't predict it would happen this week, and it did. And that was Bailey Cadamarteri coming in for Jovan. An interesting call, but I think one that's been coming and will probably now be the norm rather than the exception.
Yeah, maybe so. I predicted this on the podcast this week after not predicting it last week, so thankfully got that right. But I think it's great that we've got. I'm just saying. I think it's good that we've got the option there, isn't it? You know, the fact that we haven't got a guaranteed front two, and then everyone else is a bit part player. We actually have got 4 players, as it seems at the moment. Rob Street's struggling to get on the bench at the moment, so it seems that we've got kind of 4 key centre forwards in the squad. Particularly after his half an hour or so performance against Peterborough, I think we all saw kind of what Bailey can bring. He seemed quite threatening at times. Certainly running in behind, he seems, his hold up play seemed decent, but he seems a real threat in behind. That seems his the kind of the biggest part of his game. So yeah, I was pleased to see him start. And I'm a Jovan fan. I have to say, I really like what Jovan McCann has brought to the team, but I think Bailey was brought in to play football. I don't think it's ever guaranteed. I don't think we'd ever bring a lone player in and kind of agree that he has to start no matter what. I think it's going to always be done on merit, but I think it's nice to mix it up now and then. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what your opinion is on his overall performance, because I thought we saw flashes personally, but maybe a couple of moments where he could have done things differently. But I imagine, because it's his first start, you got to be kind of hyper analytical of that. And he didn't have a huge amount to feed off either. So I can see him keeping his start in place. I don't think he did anything to justify not keeping it. But yeah, there was some very different elements to his game compared to what Jovan has. So I think that's a nice kind of option to have. But as mentioned with Ben on Thursday, even though we have the 4 centre forwards available, for me, it's who starts with Ben House. Ben House absolutely has to start. It's which of the other 3 gets to play alongside him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's nearly always going to be Bailey, in my opinion, because I think one of the things that Michael mentioned in his post-match, which we'll obviously come on to, was, we flashed balls into the box, and we did. We put 10 crosses in the second half, which was twice as many as in the first half. Okay, the quality wasn't always there. But the type of player that you want alongside Ben House is the type of player that's going to get onto the end of those crosses, or is going to cause a little bit of an issue. Now, this being his first start alongside Ben House, the chemistry wasn't quite there. It takes a while to work on, but I think he's the sort of striker that will be, when I say a fox in the box, it's it's lazy. That's the second lazy thing that I've already said on the podcast. But I think he is more that kind of out and out centre forward, the player that will pop up in certain positions. I also think that he is more suited to games where there's going to be space in behind. I think we saw that with one run in the second half, potentially, where he went down the right. If there's a little bit of a gap or a little bit of something in behind, I think he's got a little bit of pace. So when we play a Birmingham, or when we play a Wrexham, or any of the teams up there that are going to come on to us and are going to want to attack and are going to want to push forward, I think the Bailey Cadamarteri will probably be a good option. For me yesterday, it actually felt a little bit like a Freddie Draper type dates, particularly that we look to go a little bit longer, a little bit quicker. I really felt that he would have been a good choice, and obviously we didn't see him at all. So that was only the only real shock. Probably Dom Jeffries keeping his place was, we can mention Dom. I thought he was excellent. But I say excellent, nobody was excellent, but I thought he was very good in doing what he needed to do. I thought he handled one lively winger, and there was 2 lively wingers for them, very, very well. There's a certain sort of stoic determination about him. Once or twice I saw him kind of getting a little bit agitated with he wasn't given a pass or somebody didn't take a run. He doesn't look, and this isn't a negative, he doesn't look like a happy player. You know how like some players, Ethan Arahan, you see him, he's got a smile on his face a lot of the time, and he's being a bit of a, getting under people's skins, but he's loving it. Dom Jeffries, while he's playing, to me, it almost looks like he's not even enjoying it, and it's kind of like a Sean Rowan. Yeah, that whole left hand.
Just about to say the same. It's similar to Sean Rowan's mentality. Yeah, like just really serious. Just really serious.
Yeah, just really serious. Like, my God, we're not getting any laughs out the left side, are we? Let's go over to the right side and see if we can get some chuckles over there. So with those changes, I know you're a tactics geek. But breaking it down for those listening at home, what did it mean tactically for us against them? And when I say breaking it down, I mean into the rawest possible layman's
Yeah, of course.
terms.
Well, I thought this would be a similar game to the Peterborough game. I thought Wigan would want to keep the ball. They played, I think top 3 or 4 in the league for short passes. They were, in a lot of ways quite similar to Peterborough. So I, almost always wanted to play out from the back, particularly off goal kicks, and a similar shape in possession. So I expected us to line up in our regular 3-5-2 in possession as we always do, but to be similar to we were against Peterborough, to be 4-4-2 out of possession and to press quite high up the pitch as we did against Peterborough. To be honest, particularly in the first half, I didn't see that too much. I saw us as a back 5 quite a lot. We did go into a 4 from time to time, but it was predominantly a 5 with Derricka and Jeffries playing in line with the back 3, rather than Derricka kind of slotting in at a right back and Jeffries more of a left midfielder as we were last week. So I also thought we were more passive, to be honest, in that regard. I remember a lot of times against Peterborough, again, particularly off their goal kicks, us setting up really, really aggressively, almost on the edge of the 18-yard box. And yesterday, we didn't at all. And because we did it against Peterborough and we didn't against Wigan, you imagine there'll be a tactical reason or a statistical reason that the guys have been working on this week because of that. But yeah, I like to see us be really aggressive. I like to see us press high up the pitch. I was actually quite surprised to keep us with a +2 at centre back rather than just a +1. But Wigan are quite good at playing through the thirds. I think when they get to the final third, this is quite a lot still to do from them. They don't create a huge amount at all. It wasn't just against us. I think we did keep them out well, but they haven't created a huge amount this season from open play at all. But they play through the thirds quite nicely. But yeah, I think from us, we did play our 3-5-2 in and out of possession for the majority of the game. And honestly, particularly in the first half, I think we were worse for it. Our PPDA was the highest it's been at any point this season. So that's the passes allowed per defensive action. It was all the way up at 13.7 passes allowed in the first half, which is pretty damn high compared to what we're kind of used to. So yeah, from a tactical perspective, from our point of view, it was different to Peterborough. I don't know whether that was right and wrong, depending on whether you think 0-0's a point gained or 2 point dropped. I suppose will depend on what side of the fence you sit.
I think it's hard, in my humble opinion, to call any situation 6 games in with a draw, 2 points dropped, unless it's from a winning position. I think if it's a stalemate like yesterday, it would be wrong to say 2 points dropped, in my opinion. Interesting long passes, people thinking that we were going a little bit longer. I think Liam Scully has referred to it in the past as heavy metal football. First half, Lincoln City long passes 30, Wigan Athletic long passes 24. So that presumption that it was all long ball. We were more direct and they were trying to be more patient in the first half. But it was really that the first half was just a damp squib, wasn't it? This is normally where we talk about chances, where we talk about controversy, where we talk about tackles, and there's so little for us to discuss. Now, there are 2 things I wanted to discuss, and I don't know if there's anything then that you would like to add. Tendai Derricka's chance, because it was our only shot on target in the first half. And it came on the back of 2 chances from Wigan. And I always felt that they were more susceptible to us breaking after they had just kind of almost not switched off at the back, but they'd switched to a more attacking emphasis. They got forward in numbers, and there was only those very brief moments where there was a chance at one and then bang, a chance up at the other end, half chance, let's say. But Tendai going through, I mean, I think he made the wrong choice. He had Bailey Cadamartri to his left. I thought he could have passed it. Instead, he's had an effort at goal. It was tame. I don't think we really tested Sam Tickle. And I didn't think Sam Tickle looked entirely comfortable in goal. I think if we had managed to get a shot or 2 away that hadn't just been straight down his throat, I think that we could have had a little bit of joy. But it wasn't through a lack of trying, certainly in the second half. So that was my first half observation, which I'll let you retort in a minute. The second one was I actually think Conor McGrandles was a lucky boy. Now, I think it's in the first half. But there was a tackle of his that I actually thought was probably worth a booking, and the referee didn't even give it as a free kick. And then moments later, there was a bit of a tussle, and I thought I saw him just have a little kick out at one of their players, which it was a David Beckham-esque, World Cup 98 kind of flick you out kind of. But a tougher referee, a more particular referee might have acted. But it's, to be honest, if that's as controversial as it gets, wow. Anyway, I'll throw that back over to you now.
Yeah, well, firstly on the McGrandles thing, maybe, to be honest, I don't know what to say because I didn't actually see it. I'll be honest with you. When you mentioned it earlier before we started recording, I didn't even know it had happened, to be honest. So I genuinely cannot comment on that. It's not on the extended highlights or anything as well. So it'd be remiss of me to pretend I did. On the Rick's chance, I think firstly, good ball. Really good. I think it was a Sean Rowan crossfield ball. So really, really good pass. Tendai's done really well to bring it down, by the way. I think to get it under control off a 60, 70 yard pass like that was excellent. Obviously made a really good run. He's full of energy as Tendai. I think love to see that. Would have been against his old team as well, I think, which would be an interest to see if he had scored, would he have celebrated or not. I don't think he made the wrong decision shooting. It wasn't a great shot, but I don't think he made the wrong decision. Bailey was in the middle. There was 2 defenders between him and the ball. I think if you've got a chance to shoot like that and you try and play the ball across to the centre forward and it gets intercepted, you get criticised for not having a shot. And I don't think there was a clear pass through to Bailey. So yeah, I've got no issue with him having a shot. It was our only shot on target in the first half, so at least it's good for the stats, I suppose. But it was a threat. But it was our only real threat in the first half, and it came directly off Wigan kind of building an attack. I think Wigan did have the lion's share of the first half. I still don't think they were brilliant in the final third. They just had more than we did. But again, that isn't to say a huge amount. They only actually played 18 accurate balls into the final third in the first half. We did 17 ourselves. And if we're saying that Wigan edged that first half to only play 1 extra pass into the final third compared to us, I think the accurate ball into the final third, I think that says quite a bit. Obviously, they absolutely dominated possession, but most of it was in the first 2/3 of the pitch, I imagine. There's one thing, if anyone knows this, by the way, I would love for someone to let me know. There's a statistic that I can't find anywhere for League One matches. It's called either called pitch tilt or field tilt, and it only takes into consideration possession in opposition third. So it adds up all the total number of touches in the opposition third for both teams, and then depending on how many you had compared to your opponent will give you a percentage. And I think that's a far more accurate indication of attacking intent and who actually dominates the game and possession, because our possession stats, of course, are lowest in the league. But I would like to see what our field tilt is. I imagine it certainly isn't bottom of the league. So yeah, if anyone knows that, I can't find it anywhere. So if anyone knows how to find it, please do let me know. Any other football nerds out there, that would be really great to know. But yeah, first half overall thoughts. Honestly, at half time, I was bored. There was nothing happened, and
Fair enough.
that was it. And it's rare for me to be bored. I like to find the nuances in the game. I even find out possession setup, and even if we haven't got the ball, I find it interesting to look at the setups. And I was bored at half time. I was confident that we could kick on in the second half. I imagine it wasn't the sort of game that Michael Barlow would like us to see. Dare I say, it was quite Mark Kennedy-esque in the first half, and that's not something I would like to say lightly, but it felt like that a little bit. But we also know that isn't us. That's our norm. We had 90 minutes of that for the majority of games last season. We now know that is not normal for us to have to be that passive, to be that deep, and maybe to play that fewer passes, and maybe there's a few misplaced ones. Last little point on the first half before I be quiet is last week it felt like it was 2 really, really good teams playing against each other, and it was a game on a knife edge, and 2 contrasting styles, but 2 high quality teams. I didn't actually feel that as much yesterday. It felt last week that a slip, a misplaced pass, a wrong decision would be punished. And there were a couple of misplaced passes. There were a couple of slips and bad decisions that weren't punished in the first half, both ways. So I didn't actually feel like it was 2 high quality sides. It was just 2 decent sides that were cancelling each other out.
Did it feel like 2 mid-table sides?
Yeah, in the first half it did, certainly. I wouldn't say so in the second, but the first half it did.
That's what were some of the comments around as well. We were deciding when to go for a drink were 2 mid-table sides. I again, we'll use the lazy klaxon. I think that's probably another lazy assessment, because it's looking at the game very much at face value without trying to find the nuances. And if you look at it at face value, there was elements of 0-0 with Cambridge, elements of 0-0 with Charlton Athletic under Mark Kennedy. But any 0-0 draw at home where there are very few shots on target, it's easy to lump them all in together. And I think this was a very different type of game. And as I have said, it did feel like the one at their place where there was very few chances, but it was two half-decent sides. It wasn't, I'm wondering, 0-0 with Cambridge. That was just a rubbish side and that were there for the taking. Wigan weren't there for the taking. Very, very organised at the back. A couple of the boys they have at the back putting their bodies on the line. Will Amerson getting a couple of blocks in, etc. Obviously, the former Exeter man. So, second half, you know what? I don't even think it was a game of two halves. I think it was a game of, dare I say, 4 quarters. 3 of them being very poor because actually, well, not poor to watch, because even the first period of the second half, there was a little bit more intent from us, but I don't think the game really felt like it particularly came alive. Obviously, they've struck the outside of the post late on, but there was no shots at all for us from 30 minutes to 72 minutes, which is notable. And for Wigan, it's the same. There was no shots for that. I think they only had 1 shot in the second half, which was the one from Asgard that hit the post. And that was on 74 minutes. So there was literally not a single attempt on goal from 45 minutes to 70 minutes. So you're talking, 25 minutes of the second half where, once again, nothing happened.
Yeah, there was. I think there was more intent. I agree. I think that we were seeing a bit more aggressive. We had a bit more of the ball. Certainly in their half, I didn't think Wigan dominated the game at any point, but I think they dominated territory and possession for a lot of the first half. Second half, I didn't think that at all. But the game certainly did spark a bit more into life after the 2 midfield substitutions when both JJ McKiernan and notably Jack Moylan came on for McGrandles and Bayliss. And from that point, we were really good, actually. I think we were by far the better team. And I think we were, if any team was going to win from that point onwards, it was us. Obviously, statistics don't lie always. It should have been 0-0 and it was. But from that point onwards, there was only one team that looked like scoring, and we could have, to be honest. The ball went across the box a couple of times. Moylan had a couple of shots as well. We played 30 accurate passes into the final third in the second half, so that's almost double what we did in the first half. And Wigan only played 14, so we was more than double the number from Wigan. Their PPDA, this is really interesting, I think, was 22.3 in the second half. So they allowed us to have 22 passes before they made a defensive action. And we didn't play a huge number of passes around the back. We had more control than we did in the first half. We don't play out from the back too much. We know we still try and get the ball in the final third relatively quickly. So 22.3 is massive. It was only 12.5 in the first half. So for it to almost double shows that we definitely dominated the second half in regard to territory. Still didn't really create a clear-cut chance, though, in honesty. But we looked more threatening, certainly in the second half. Particularly Jack Moylan. I think Jack Moylan was the one player that made a real impact. And if it was possible to give a player that played 20 minutes man of the match, I think I probably would have done, because he was excellent in his little cameo, to be honest. I thought he was absolutely superb, and I think he probably deserves to start against Cambridge next Saturday.
Big call. It's a big call. Conor McGrandles actually wasn't particularly good yesterday. I think if you look at his defense, if you look at his duels, he actually lost more of his duels than he's won. I think he just looked a little bit jaded and off it. Ethan Arahan obviously stands out. Tom Bayliss didn't really get on the ball in that first half either. And as you say, when we brought the more attacking-minded midfielders, perhaps, okay, Bayliss is probably like for like with, let's say, a McKiernan, but then Conor McGrandles and Jack Moylan are 2 very different players. And Jack did want to make things happen when he got on the ball. He ran at Wigan. It gave him something different to think about, I think, in the final 20-odd minutes. And whilst it didn't really fall for us, I do think that we ramped up the pressure a little bit. And as I said, there was lots of balls into the box. And XG doesn't take that into account. And Pete Summers will absolutely love me saying this, because it's a dig at XG. And Jack will be the same, Jack Mulhall. All those people who don't like the stats, who cringe when they hear me say, and here's my co-host, Chris. Do you know what I mean? All people who don't like the numbers. XG doesn't bring into account balls that flash across the box where there isn't a touch that creates an opportunity, and yet it is still a chance, and XG doesn't reflect that. So while we were on 0.50 XG, I actually think that some of the balls into the box were much better, and probably the stats don't tell you the full story, which, they don't. You do have to have the eye test sometimes. but almost all of that came after the substitutions. It brought one or two other players kind of back into it a little bit. I keep talking about Dom Jeffries. I thought that there was only a brief overlap, I think, while he was on the field and Jack Moylan was on the field. But I don't know. It just felt like it gave everybody a little bit of a spark. Had the game gone on another 20 minutes, would we have scored? Probably not, because, like you say, there were half chances. But it would be, if you had to play to a first goal, would still probably be going now. But we were more likely to get it than I think they were.
Yeah, I agree with that. I completely agree with that. I actually think if the game did go on for another 5-10 minutes, we would have a decent chance to score. I would not say we would have scored, but I think we'd have been not just a bit more likely. I think we're by far more likely. I think that goes to show the strength that we have on the bench, the impact that we can bring players on, and they can have that sort of impact. But just quickly on the stats, I'm not going to touch on the actual numbers themselves, but no, I'd agree, by the way, that XG doesn't take everything into consideration. I would argue that no stats takes anything into consideration, which is why you should never look at them just in isolation. It's using 2 or 3 or 4 different metrics to tell a different story. Now, XG just gives you an indication of how quality, what part of the pitch were the shots that were taken from. That is really what that indicates. And if you've got an XG of 3 or 4 and you didn't score, then you can feel a bit aggrieved, and vice versa. If you've got an XG of 0.2 and you've won the game, you can expect that discrepancy to even out over the season. But it's not an indication of exactly how many goals you should have scored in that individual game. I think it's an indication of the quality of shots that you've had. But that in combination with things like touches in the box entries, I think that's good. Just interesting that, we had 3 times as many touches in the box in the second half as we did the first half. We entered the box more times in the second half, than we did the second half. Put more crosses in. We were absolutely better in the second half. And you know what? If that second half performance was the first half performance, I think we're all going, at half time, we're really excited for what the second half's going to bring. It was just almost like that first half was almost like a bit of a friendly, bit of a warm up. And then, we're getting towards a more regular kickoff time at the point that the second half kicks off. And maybe there's something to do with that. I do honestly think that the early kickoff has something to do with this. It's rarely I've watched an early kickoff match on TV where it's been particularly exciting. I don't know, I haven't got any hard data to prove that this is the case, but it just feels like that. And I don't know if there's much on that, if it was just, if it was just as we were on the day, 2 teams, and it would have happened if it was 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, we've had the same game. Or actually, if it did kick off at 3, would it have been a bit different? I don't know the answer to that question, but I personally don't massively like early kickoffs at all. It felt really weird. I got up, normally my Saturday ritual, get up in the morning, do some sort of exercise, go for breakfast with you, then go to the ground, fan zone, chatting to people, go and have a nice, build up to it. Whereas yesterday, I literally got up, got dressed, got showered, and went to the game, and it just flew. The whole afternoon just flew by, to be honest. And yeah, the game wasn't that memorable, of course, as we've mentioned. So maybe you put 2 and 2 together, you think, well, I don't like early kickoffs then because you get boring games, but I don't think it helped.
So 28 minutes in, we have more or less exhausted everything that happened on the field, but there's 1 or 2 points I think that I still want to talk about. One of them is that there was a real misconception around me that Sean Rowan had a bad game yesterday, which I know we wanted to talk about. Now, I think in terms of his passing, I thought that he was quite poor, and I know that we disagree a little bit on this. I mean, there was a couple of wayward crosses. There was one ball that he hit into a channel, and there was nobody in the channel. And once he's played one bad shot, one bad pass, it's that kind of confirmation bias, isn't it? That the next time he does it, it's Rowan again. And then if he does something good, it doesn't entirely register. And then his next bad pass erases any good passes that he's done. I thought out of possession, I thought defensively he was excellent again. And that really shouldn't be overlooked, particularly because Dion Rankin, who's obviously former Chelsea, the lad Thomas they've got on loan from Leicester City, really lively, vibrant wingers, good on the ball, full of tricks. Tendai and Sean Rowan, although it was Tendai and Dom Jeffries, but Sean Rowan had to kind of often handle that as well on that left-hand side. I thought he was superb, but it was an off day for him in terms of his passing, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it wasn't just a couple of missed hit crosses; they were massively wayward, weren't they? So they stand out. So anyone that's just kind of watching that doesn't look at stats and things, has no interest in that, which is absolutely fine. You look at that, and think, well, that was a shit cross, and then you do it. He's done it again. well, obviously Sean's had a bad game, because they're the standout moments in a game with not many standout moments, by the way. In some of those opportunities we had to get the ball in the box in dangerous areas, and it's fluffed his lines to an extent. It sticks in your mind. Therefore, it's easy to say Sean's had a bad game. But I honestly think, aside from those two crosses, there's not a lot he did wrong. I'm going to touch on the channel ball later in the second half as well, because I think that's a potential discussion point. But I agree with you defensively. I think he didn't put a foot wrong defensively. Again, 2 or 3 really, really good 1v1 moments defending. But they don't stand in your mind, because we're football fans. We like to see the ball at the other end of the pitch. They're the bits that stick in your mind more, aren't they? That channel ball that we touched on, though, because we're only talking about one pass here. Firstly, he didn't have a lot of any short options on at all. But also, I think it was pretty clear, particularly from the first half, that one of our ways in, or potential ways in, was not necessarily to aim to win the first ball. Hello, Charlie. But what we were clearly planning on was, when the outside centre back had the ball, whether it was Jacko or Rowan, wing back comes short as a decoy for a channel ball. And we did that loads and loads of times. In my mind, too often, but there's clearly a reason that we're doing that. And I remember we had that evening with the data analyst last season, which was fascinating. And what they said is, any pass that's in this particular area of the pitch is planned. So it might even if it looks like a long hoof, it isn't a long hoof. We will have identified that there's an area of the pitch where Wigan are weak at winning second balls, most likely. And I like to think when Jack Morland came on, he had 2 runs, didn't he, into the box. His first run came off a channel ball, which was nodded back. I think the Wigan defender won the ball, but Jack was there to win, to pounce on it. And then that's where we was winning. And I think in the first half, particularly, that's what we was playing. We were playing for those moments. We know that Wigan are quite difficult to break down. So we're looking like we're trying to stop trying to play through the midfield. And I felt the players have clearly been instructed, outside centre halves particularly, to hit that area of the pitch, regardless of whether it goes to one of our players or not, because we're playing to win the second balls in that area. We didn't in that example. But for me, Sean's just following instructions there when he didn't have an obvious short pass on. I understand the groans, but I also wanted to put, we have context there that we were told directly from the club on that brilliant evening. And it wasn't just a one pass into that area. We'd put, I would say, 20 passes into that area over the course of the match for clearly for a reason. It was too often for it to just be a player's decision. It's clearly an instruction for it. So I think that one pass wasn't necessarily an issue for me.
So should we dispel a myth?
Go
quickly
on.
Sean Rowan had a bad game in terms of passing. True or false?
Yeah, it wasn't as good as it is. Crossing, in terms of crossing, I don't think his passing was bad. I think his crossing was wayward.
Are you backing yourself on that?
I mean, you've clearly got some stats. So the
Are
thing
you
is,
backing
no, I'm going to add more context to this. If he's aimed to hit a channel, and we don't mind if a Wigan defender heads the ball back and we can pounce on it, I think that's a successful action by Sean. But the stats would say
all
otherwise.
of your talk is irrelevant. You either back yourself or you don't. Do you back yourself?
Yes.
And you are right to do so. So, look at the relief on your face. People who are listening will not understand the relief there on Chris's face. He hates having it sprung on him. I know he does. So, in terms of passing, yes, Sean's crossing wasn't great. 5 attempted crosses, only 1 landed, 20%. He averages 3.3 a game, 40%. He hasn't been below 33% in any other game as yet this season. So, crossing, yes, he was wayward. Long passes yesterday, 24. 16 of which were accurate at 67%. His average is 64.2%, and his percentage was lower in the Peterborough game, 62, in the Stevenage game, 63, in the Barnsley game, 56, and in the Burton game, 62. So he was actually, in terms of his long passes, more accurate yesterday than almost every other game this season. His general passing accuracy, by the way, was also better, 77%. The average is 74, and he's only once been above 77% in short passing, which was against Barnsley. He also attempted almost twice or as many long passes yesterday than any other game this season that he's played in. So whilst, and again, I think it goes on to that kind of bias, doesn't it? That whilst it's really easy to go, he had a bad game. I came away saying he was off it today. His passes were wayward today. It wasn't good. in actual fact, aside from 2 woefully misplaced crosses and 2 others that didn't land, and bear in mind, accuracy is as much for me on the striker as it is on the defender or on the person playing the ball, because you could play a blinder of a crossing. If no one gets on the end of it, it's an inaccurate cross. He put 2 into the stands. So I think, and I haven't seen the ratings as yet on the site, but people will almost undoubtedly have Sean as the worst player, the worst Lincoln City player on the field yesterday. And I think that would be grossly unfair. I'll tell you what we'll do, Chris. Shall we go to an ad break? Okay, so there was an announcement from our sponsors. If it was Sky Sports, they're the ones that are responsible for me drinking absinthe coladas at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So whatever. So let's have a look at some of the managers' comments. So first of all, Michael Scabala's comments. People will probably already have heard these, but genuinely, he says, we're disappointed not to get 3 points. I thought it was a game of 2 halves for us. We started slow in the first half and didn't get into our rhythm nor dominate them enough. In the second period, we were the ones trying to win it and trying to get the goal. We had flashes across the box, moments in their area, but just lacked that final ball or final action. Fair?
Yeah, no complaints. Absolutely agree with him.
Very good. Now, Sean Maloney, he is the Wigan Athletic manager, and he said, we kept trying to create chances and win the game. In the last 10 minutes, we had to deal with a lot of long balls and set plays. It was tough defensively. They, meaning Lincoln, are really good, and we found it hard to break through them. They've got a brilliant record since the manager came in, and he's made them hard to beat. They are one of, if not the best teams in the league at set plays, and very good at high pressing and hurting you when they win it. The performance in large parts was good, but I'd like it a little bit quicker at times, but we also have to credit the opponent for making it very hard. I mean, they are probably fair comments. What are your thoughts on? Because obviously you've only, that's the first you've heard of those.
It is, yeah. That was very respectful, to be honest, from Sean Maloney. It's always interesting to hear the manager's perspective from the opposition, but I think that's fair. You know, he said that they were trying to win. I think no denying that they were trying to win. They weren't really given much of an opportunity in the second half. As you mentioned before, the only shot they had in the second half was the Asgard header that hit the post, and that was it. They didn't have a huge amount of territory, but I think in terms of their style, they want to build up through the thirds. They want to try and create high-quality chances with control. There's no denying they were still trying to do that, but we just didn't let them. I think the second half we were far better at stopping them, and then as the half progressed, we were better at creating our own chances after the subs, as mentioned. But yeah, there's not any controversy in the comments to talk about, is there? I think it's both comments from both managers was absolutely fair dues.
Okay, so here's a tiny bit of controversy, possibly, because Sean Maloney also said Will Aimson produced a moment which gives us a point. So he's saying at some point Will Aimson has done something that preserves a point. I'm assuming that would be a tackle on Jack Moylan. I can't believe we're scraping the barrel talking about a potential tackle. I mean, I think he's probably slightly overstating the moment. But let's talk a little bit about Aimson. And the reason I want to do that is because I captained him in the EFL Fantasy League. Now, anybody who is interested in the EFL Fantasy League knows that Chris and I, Chris and I have a show that might be worth watching where we are attempting to outdo each other, and it's delicately poised at the moment on a double game week. But after captain Will Aimson, it looks like a quite a good choice by me. But in seriousness, he did have a really good game, didn't he? I mean, we talk about Pordy and Adam Jackson and how good we are at repelling attacks. I think at the other end, Aimson was one of 2 or 3 Wigan defenders that were also outstanding. Yeah.
There's no denying that Wigan are a good team defensively, and yeah, he put a good performance in. I really just don't want to give him too much credit because I don't want to give you too much credit for selecting him in the Fantasy EFL. In all seriousness, though, Wigan's only real key chance in the first half was when Dion Rankin cut inside and got a shot away, and that was blocked by Pordy O'Connor. I imagine that goes down in the same book as whatever Will Aimson did against Jack Moylan. They were probably the 2 biggest chances of the game. But yeah, he was all right, wasn't he? He was fine. They defended well. There's no denying Wigan are a decent team. They'll be comfortable this season. I don't know if they create enough going forward to have real, genuine playoff aspirations. It wasn't just against us. They've struggled to create opportunities from open play throughout the season. Even that game last week where they won 4-0 away at Bristol Rovers, 2 were set pieces, which were defensively defended terribly. 1 was a goalkeeping error and 1 was a direct free kick. So open play chances were still at a bit of a premium for them. And prior to that, they'd only beaten Crawley, and that was 1-0 in a game that they only had 0.4 XG or something like that. So, yeah, going forward, I think there's definitely something lacking from Wigan. But I suppose if you're a Wigan fan and a fan of any football club that's defending well but not creating too much, you kind of rather it be that way around, because you build from the back and you're solid at the back, and then you've only got to improve your forward play. Dare I say, a little bit similar to us, different styles, of course, but probably in a similar situation.
Jason Kerr had a good game as well. He was another Wigan defender that I happened to pick in my AFL fantasy team. Between the two of them, they got 23 points for me, which was more than I got from my entire team in the first week. So if you are interested in the AFL Fantasy League, we do a podcast that we enjoy recording more than people apparently enjoy listening. That this week, for the first time ever, broke 3 figures in terms of views on YouTube. So very good. We had a special guest on. I don't think we've got one yet queued up, but we will certainly try. But Dean Gripton of Football Manager fame was on last weekend, so check that out on YouTube if you get a chance. Finally, 41 minutes, Goalkeepers Union. You haven't mentioned him at all, and I think that is a massive testament to how well Zach Geacock came into the side and how well he did, because I think it's a big call. I think George Wicken's getting ruled out from yesterday's game is big, because as I understand it, the club probably would like to have loaned Zach Geacock out, and then as soon as George Wickens gets injured, we can call in an emergency loan, which is what we've done, I think, in the past. With Jamie Pardington, I think, being injured for a short period, we didn't loan Zach out. So he's been dropped in it a little bit. There was a thought that he could be a first-team goalkeeper for Lincoln City in the season or so if he gets some more experience, but he had to come in. He's kept a clean sheet on his full league debut for Lincoln. He didn't have an awful lot to do. We are talking about how Wigan didn't produce a lot, so he didn't have a lot to do. But what he did, I thought he did well. I thought his kicking, whilst people will look and think, well, they always went out for a goal kick, it wasn't anything to do with what his kicking. 1 or 2 may have been slightly overhit, but nothing drifted out wide. He was relatively accurate. He put balls into the right area. He handled everything he needed to. It didn't feel like we had a stand in there at all, and I think fair play to the lad for that.
Yeah, I think he did really well. I think he had 1 save to make, didn't he, in the first half off the free kick, which I was really pleased with him. I thought he had really good hands. The replay didn't give it justice, but I could have sworn from the angle that I was sat at, it took a little deflection off the wall. Just a real slight deflection, and that is really difficult to adjust to. And it was hit hard. The free kick was hit hard, albeit in a comfortable area. He was so calm and comfortable to hold on to that. I thought that was going to be a parried shot, and he held on to it. And I think that, from my perspective, watching, settled me down in terms of, okay, this guy's all right. He's composed and confident. I've been impressed with his ball striking ever since we saw him in pre-season, to be honest. And with both feet, actually, I think his ball striking is absolutely superb for a goalkeeper, and was hitting really good areas. Didn't always come off, as you mentioned, but that wasn't necessarily his fault. It's difficult to drop the ball on a sixpence all the way from the other end of the pitch, and I think he's really good at that on the whole. In all honesty, there was maybe 1 or 2 opportunities in the second half. He could have taken a bit of pressure off the defence and come and claimed a cross where he decided to stay on his line. But yeah, no glaring errors at all. And I think the clean sheet says it all, really, doesn't it? Clean sheet on your league debut. I think that's not to be overstated. The fact that it's not someone that's had loads of league or even professional loans in his career. He's had a few non-league loans in semi-professional ranks, but nothing in the professional game. This was his first league appearance, or first league start, should I say? And apart from his game he played for Birmingham, absolutely, in which he kept a clean sheet as well. 4 games for Birmingham.
Played 4 times for Birmingham.
Oh, what an error I've made there. But anyway, his first league appearance for Lincoln City. Debut, good. Did all right. Next. End of podcast.
He conceded 10 in 2 games in April 2022 for Birmingham. They were beaten 4-2 by Coventry and 6-1 by Blackpool. And the season,
his debut, didn't he?
He did keep a clean sheet on his debut against Brentford. And also he kept up the run of standing goalkeepers coming in for a single game and not getting beat for Lincoln City. Because if you look back at Sam Long, when Jordan Wrights had to come in for 1 game, Aidan Grant, etc., you have to go all the way back to 2013 for a standing keeper coming in for 1 game, suffering a Lincoln City defeat. So it's quite a nice little run for us to end on. So as things stand, we remain, and obviously it's such early days, it's almost ridiculous to say it, but we remain in the playoff spots. We are 6th with 11 points, games in hand over 3 of the sides above us, Charlton, Barnsley and Wrexham. Interesting that the only team that we've played above us at the moment are the only team that have beaten us, and that's Barnsley, and they probably didn't deserve it. But if we were to win our game in hand, ifs and buts, that would actually take us up 2 more places. So it could take us up to 4th. I think it is a really tight division at the moment, and obviously looking down, a win for anybody down to 13th, coupled with a defeat for us, would see us drop down. So I mean, it's only 6 games in at the moment. But some really interesting results springing up, which I think are worth talking about. Obviously, yesterday there was a massive win for a resurgent Bolton Wanderers. It was only their 2nd win of the season. They put 5 past Reading. Now, when I say, are we worried about Reading? Of course we're not. We don't give a toss about any other League One side than Lincoln City. But in general terms, from punditry, the takeovers collapsed. They've been pumped 5-2. Even Ruben Selles has mentioned something along the lines of he doesn't know how much longer it will continue to not particularly affect the play-in side of things. Are we worried about Reading now this season, do you think?
More so than I was. I still think Ruben Selles is a superb manager at this level. Higher levels as well, to be honest. I think he's shown real loyalty to stay at Reading. I imagine, though, with this takeover collapsing, if and when a top League One and or Championship club, another job comes up in the next month or 2, which there will be because there always are, I think his name will be towards the top of that list, to be honest. And I think maybe that patience and that loyalty might be tested a little bit. And if he does go, then I would be a bit more concerned about Reading. I think squad-wise, they've got a very capable squad in League One. I think they'd be fine into the staying up. I don't think yesterday, I haven't seen the highlights, I haven't seen the actual result, the actual game, but result-wise, for me, this is a bit more of Bolton finally turning up this season rather than Reading particularly doing anything that's too concerning. I think it's the timing makes it concerning after the news this week. But for me, this is Bolton returning to form, to be honest. And I expect Bolton to improve. They should have been much better this season. You know, they've improved every season under Ian Evatt so far. So you don't turn into a bad team or become a bad manager overnight. You often see teams that lose in the playoffs have a little bit of a slow start to the following season, but I expect them to climb the table. I don't expect to see Reading be on the end of many big defeats. But the big question is whether they can keep on to Selles. That's the big one for me.
Well, here's some comments. So first of all, comments from the 20th. So comments on Friday. He said, I've had enough of this situation now. All the bad situations that can happen in football have happened to me in the last 16 months. I'm not a person that likes to quit, but I do need to reflect on where could be the ending point because I'm not happy with everything that's happened. And then after yesterday's game, he has said, we've been there before. Unfortunately, the circle is repeating and the support to this team and the staff is non-existent from the club. That's the reality. There will be a moment that we will not be able to cope, but it's not the point of why we didn't win today. I mean, obviously, we're going off-piste a little bit here, but they're obviously worrying comments, I think, for Reading fans. Next up for the Imps are Cambridge United. They are rock bottom of the division, 1 point from 6 games. Beaten 2-1 at Wycombe yesterday. Dan on Lunderloot ominously scoring for them. But another big result, which actually kept us in the top 6. Stockport 1, Leyton Orient 4. I mean, where do they come from?
It's bizarre, isn't it? It just shows that you can read very little into a league table after 4 or 5 games. You know, we've got an idea of who you think is going to be good. You've got an idea of who you think isn't going to be good. But you don't know until 10, 15 games in. Leyton Orient, I didn't expect to be top half this season, but I certainly didn't expect them to be bottom of the table. Just like Stockport, didn't expect them to be top of the league, but expected them to be competitive towards the top half. But so both teams, so Stockport will probably overperforming, Leyton Orient will probably underperforming. Certainly wouldn't expect to see this result though. But I think it goes to show that if you're not on it, it's a good level of football, this. And if you aren't on it for the day, you can get punished. And I think consistency is often hugely underrated, isn't it? You know, you see the big results, you see the big wins, but it's the games that you don't lose, I think, that sometimes keep things ticking over nicely. So massive win for that for Leyton Orient, by the way. Huge win, because confidence would have been low there. And even if you think the performances deserve better results, you've got to get the result at some point, and then it just takes that weight off your shoulders. But yeah, another result this week that you probably didn't see coming.
So Stockport up against City 26th of October. They're actually without a win now in 3 League One games. 2 of those games against Mansfield and Crawley, which are games I think they would probably have expected to win. Here's the interesting thing: we actually have exactly the same record now as Stockport. 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 defeat, scored 10, let in 6, goal difference of 4, 11 points. At this moment in time, we are actually in the playoffs, I think, based purely on the fact that we've come before them alphabetically.
Maybe that's it.
And I don't know how that works at the end of a season. Let's say like you had exactly the same. I suppose it would be against your head on your head-to-heads, would it? Would they work it out?
What if you both drew 0-0 against each other twice?
I don't know. I don't know how it would work out.
It can't have ever happened, surely. Otherwise,
no,
we would know
over
the answer to
46
that question.
games. Over 46 games, probably couldn't. And then finally, but we both backed Huddersfield, I think, a little bit on the fantasy show. One of the players that we both picked scored an own goal, but they lost 3-1 to Northampton. Northampton are now up to 12th. They're a team I think I picked out that you look at the players and they could be better. Tariq Fosu scored for them yesterday. Cameron McGeehan scored for them yesterday. All in all, I think that Northampton are a side well worth watching out for. But again, shocker for Huddersfield, really, because it draws them closer to us. They've lost 2 matches now this season, which is obviously more than us. The only difference in terms of goals is that they've scored 1 more than us and let in 6. It's just still really tight, isn't it? And whilst you expect the division to take shape after 10 or 15 games, there's no point looking at after 6 games and going, we're here, we're there, or whatever. You're just beginning to get a feel for 1 or 2 sides who are struggling that shouldn't be. You're beginning to look and see 1 or 2 of the sides settling down. I personally think we are so well placed at this moment in time for a top 6 push, or at very least a top 8 push. And yet we have exactly the same record, I think, as we did 12 months ago, or exactly the same points as we did 12 months ago, which is 11 points from 6 games.
Yeah, I think the squad's very different. Obviously, management's different. Style, almost, even though some statistics on the surface look the same, I think we know there's a lot of differences in this squad, and our desire to really chase games and try and push them is very, very different to last season. So points-wise, I think we're good, but we also said if performances continued, as they did towards the start of last season, then results would follow in a negative trend, and that obviously happened. We know there's some reasons for that as well in terms of availability of players, but also I think that's a huge difference for this season. Even if we do suffer from the same injury crisis that we did last season, we've actually got the depth in the squad to be able to comfortably deal with that. So I think we're really, really well placed. Yeah, and even though the game against Wigan wasn't a particularly entertaining one, it's not one that's going to live long in the memory. It's another point picked up. It's another game unbeaten, and yeah, that allows us to look forward to Cambridge on the back of a 4-game unbeaten run, clean sheet against a team that's bottom of the league, that's only got 1 point so far, and albeit an away game, you'd imagine that they'll be desperate to get 3 points on the board. But you'd expect us to go to Cambridge, and with the desire to think we can dominate them and win the game. I certainly think that's the case.
We actually have exactly the same goal difference, goals scored and goals against, as we had 6 games in last season as well. That crazy.
I still remember that the 3-0 win against Blackpool where we only had 4 touches in the box though. Like that can't continue. So early point. I think it's interesting to draw those comparisons, but we know that we're so much further ahead as a football club than we were this time last season. So I just think means we're really well placed to kick on now, rather than maybe this time last year we were well placed to avoid the negative run having a really, really negative impact on the club.
Here's another thing.
Oh,
I love all of this. So that was 6 games, 11 points last season. The 7th game last season was actually against a team beginning with C who were struggling, Carlisle, who ended up being bottom of the table at the end of the season, where a former imp that was on loan scored against us, and now we're going to Cambridge, who are bottom, a team beginning with C, who have got a former imp who loan we terminated early, likely to score against us. And then after that, we lost 2-1 away at Portsmouth. So, yeah, you know me, I'm one for patterns
Indeed.
things like that. It's really easy to look at the Cambridge game, and I know you guys, or I think it's me and Charlie actually will do a preview of it later in the week. It's really easy to look at that and go, right, that's one we're going to go and win. Quick question to finish us off. It's exactly the type of game that Lincoln City go and don't win. But does a Michael Skubala team not succumb to those kind of patterns? I mean, unbeaten since New Year's Day. If we remain unbeaten in this game, it breaks a club record. It's an outstanding opportunity for Michael to put himself in the record books yet again, second fastest to get to 10 away wins, I think it is, and now a possibility to break a long-standing club record.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? And I don't think Michael Skubala's Lincoln City necessarily does have a huge amount in alignment with maybe Lincoln City teams of old. In that, and it's typical Lincoln, I think. But you know what? I think every single football fan says that about their club, bar maybe fans of the biggest clubs in the country. I also think that both Cambridge victories last season were not the best, but up there with some of the better performances of the season. And with Cambridge struggling once again under the same manager that they had, particularly when we played them at home, of course. I'm confident that we can go there and win. I'm confident that Michael will set us up aggressively, feeling that we can dominate that game. I expect us to have more of the ball than we have in other games this season. I expect us to have loads of box entries, loads of touches in the box, all that sort of stuff. And if we can keep them out the other end of the pitch, I expect us to win. If we have aspirations of being a playoff side, which we do, we know we do as a club, that's our aspiration this season. I think you do have the expectation that you go to a club like Cambridge, even if they were performing better than this at the moment. I think you still have the expectation that you go and beat them. So, yeah, I don't want to kind of put too much pressure on the lads, but I'm expecting us to be front foot. I'm expecting us to be aggressive. Am I expecting 3 points? Yeah, I am. I'm expecting us to win the game. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying it's going to be a walk in the park or it's going to be a walk over. But do I expect us to come out with 3 extra points this time next week? Yes, I do.
And that's the key, isn't it? Because last season, we know if the injuries hadn't happened, if the drop-off in form would then probably have not happened, we would have been in and around the top 10 all season. At the beginning of this season, we looked at League One and it looked quite daunting. Actually, now with 6 games in, we are deep in, not deep, but we've already tested the water in this division. And aside, perhaps from 2 sides, perhaps you could say Wrexham, but certainly Birmingham, obviously, absolutely outstanding. I don't think there's anybody really that worries us. And now the division's settled down, and we've been talking about the Boltons and the Rotherhams and the Wigans and the Readings and the Blackpools with the Wickhams pre-season. Actually, now you're looking at these teams in action and seeing how they're getting on against each other. I don't think there's anything at all to be afraid of. The next few games are crucial because we have 4 fixtures coming up that you think, well, they were 4 fixtures where we saw some drop-off last season. Well, that's Cambridge away, winnable, Blackpool away, probably fancy a point there, Leyton Orient at home, winnable, and then Wrexham away, Wrexham and Birmingham double headers. So in the next 3 games, if you take 7 points from that, you can afford to then go into the Wrexham and Birmingham games and play shut up kind of thing and let them have a bit of a dig. They're probably even the sort of games that we're more likely to win than others are because we'll happily let them have the possession. Birmingham more likely to hurt us with that possession, but I think Wrexham is a flash in the pan. Personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think Wrexham have surprised me in terms of how well they've done. They've got really good results and they have deserved the wins in most of their games, but there are stronger squads in the league than Wrexham. I think my prediction of them being down in 14th is probably incorrect, but I don't see them finishing top 2. I absolutely do not see that. Birmingham are going to run away with it. That's going to be a real tough game. But yeah, I can see Wrexham dropping off. I can absolutely see us getting something against Wrexham. To be honest, the only team that worries me this season is Birmingham, but everyone's going to say that. I think we could get competitive against literally every other side in this league. And that is a massive, massive statement to say. I appreciate that. But I really do believe that. And as much as Birmingham will get a few some criticism from a lot of people this season. They did beat Rotherham yesterday, which is quite funny. So that means Rotherham currently find themselves in the bottom 4, only 1 win this season. What a damn shame, hey?
So there we go. Episode 318 of the Stacey West podcast. The only podcast where you'll find a 0-0 draw with Wigan Athletic, where nothing happened, ending us talking about nobody frightening us in the division and playoff hopes. But genuinely, yesterday wasn't a great watch, but it wasn't a bad performance at all. We will be back. Now, we will be back very briefly tomorrow, where I will be doing a quick live stream with some really big news. Now, I can't talk about what that news is until tomorrow, but there is some big news coming up, big Stacey West podcast news. And then we will be back later in the week, Chris and I doing our fantasy football, which will probably be Wednesday for a Thursday drop. Given that there are games on Tuesday, and then it'll be myself and Charlie, previewing the Cambridge game. I think Ben is going to pick up an interview with somebody from Cambridge United, and who knows, there might even have been a little bit of additional news. We have been the Stacey West podcast. We were particularly bored during the game yesterday, but it's nice to be bored and not lose. So all that remains to be said to bring the weekend to a close is we like absinthe. No, wait a minute. Is up the imps.
Up the imps.